Whether he makes it through 4 years is an open question. But given the pace of the decline that we've seen between, and to my mind, again, if you go back and watch video of Trump speaking in 2020 in that campaign versus today, you'll be shocked. If you go back to 16 and watch video of him speaking versus today, you'll be really shocked. Every time Donald Trump has a setback on tariffs, whether it's caused by the courts or the market teaching him that he can't play these games, or the bond market, or the Fed, or the polling, when he has to step back from the tariff war, he benefits and the country benefits. But every time he goes back into the tariff war, things become more chaotic, the market becomes more uncertain, the job prospects in America become more uncertain. And so he's in a bad spot right now. He wants to defy the courts. I don't think any of us know how the Supreme Court is going to react to this particular case, because they have been incredibly expansionist on executive power in recent rulings. They've said no to a few things, but on the big things like deporting 500,000 people, they've been like, the president has unlimited authority. Now, this is a bright line where Article 1 and Article 2 constitutional powers are delineated very clearly regarding tariffs, and they all rest with Congress. Every bit of it rests with Congress. Congress has abrogated its responsibility in this regard to Trump's benefit. But the court may say Congress has to take that job back up. They have to do this, the legitimate way, not the way that Trump wants to do it with a string of executive orders.
So if we move on to the situation with Harvard, Marco Rubio says he's going to revoke Chinese student visas aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, looking at this, surely that's just going to push Chinese students and their money to countries like the UK.
Sure. Look, I suspect that universities around the world are rubbing their hands together. America has benefited economically over the years from Chinese students who come here, become grad students, get green cards, get work visas, stay in America, and go to work for big tech firms, go to work for big financial firms. And look, George Washington said, investing in science and learning was one of the highest things a country could do. They don't believe that. I get it. And they want to marginalize the Chinese students here and pretend that this is some sort of scandal that Chinese students come here to learn, when in fact it's been of an enormous net benefit to America over the years. And yes, the universities will all take a major hit, and it will hurt our economy in the long haul, and it will elevate the countries around the world in the shorter term. Those countries are going to experience the opposite of what happened in the 1960s, when there was a brain drain from the UK and from Europe to America. Economic conditions were so good here, and we were so welcoming, that people wanted to come to America to study and learn and work. Now we've said, the door's closed, you're not welcome. And it's not going to increase the number of jobs that Americans have, and it's not going to increase the number of American students at Harvard. This isn't some sort of pick and choose, column A, column B option. This is just going to end up in a diminished academic status for this country, and a diminished business climate for this country, and other nations will absolutely benefit. You're going to see Chinese students go and go to work on graduate degrees in the UK in particular, Germany in particular, and to a lesser degree France and Japan. They're all going to end up benefiting mightily from this absolutely enormous mistake.
Do you think that is going to create a brain drain in the US?
Absolutely. I think we are already beginning to see it. My partner works in academia, and she is seeing some of the most talented folks in her field, in her hard science field. I don't want to go too far into it. In her hard science field, they're leaving. They're not even waiting to be deported or expelled. They're applying to and receiving fellowships and postdocs and things in other countries right now. And the work that would be done here, that requires brilliant minds to do, will be done elsewhere.
So we're seeing Elon Musk leave the White House, what is the legacy that he leaves behind?
Chaos and ketamine. It was an absolute failure. Doge was a complete flop. Nothing, no real money was saved. More money was spent than was saved. The one thing they got out of it was everyone's personal data was harvested from the federal government and put in Elon's hands. God knows where it is now, probably in his AI. But Doge was an absolute failure. It crashed and burned. There's no there there. There's no success there. They can do all the press conferences they want declaring it was a great win, but he said he was going to save $2 trillion, and the actual number right now is about 50 billion. That's a failure. The Doge culture doesn't exist. The Doge ideal doesn't exist. This was a flop, and we have to acknowledge what it was. Americans do want a smaller and smarter and better government. They want to reform government. The left and right want to reform government. But this was just chaos and noise and spectacle. And at the end of the day, it didn't work. And, the fact that it didn't work is a legacy that Musk is not going to be able to easily live down. And the cost for Elon was to destroy the stock price and market for his Tesla cars and to have his other corporate enterprises drifting without leadership. So I hope it was worth it for him, but it didn't really make a difference.
Do you think that his is this the last that we're going to see of him?
No, he'll come back around. He'll try to come back in some capacity. The Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, has exiled him. She's the one who put the bullet in him, metaphorically speaking, who stabbed him in the back and was trying to push him out from the very beginning. But we'll see Elon come back around. He'll come back around. He likes the lure of power and being in the Oval Office and traveling with the president. That's sexy. That's fun stuff. It's a lot easier than trying to save a failing car company.
When I asked you what his legacy was, you said chaos and ketamine. We've had reported today, the New York Times said that Elon took large amounts of drugs during the Trump campaign.
Right.
It's not entirely clear whether he was under the influence during his time in the White House. I mean, was that at all surprising to you?
Not in the slightest. Look, I know a lot of people in the Valley. There is a Adderall, ketamine, mushroom culture there inside a lot of Silicon Valley, very wealthy people. And God bless, if I am going to take something, it's a glass of red wine at night. But, I don't get it personally, but it is certainly something that is very common out there. And look, the Trump campaign team and the Secret Service had to know this was going on. The White House had to know it was going on. Elon's company has top secret contracts with the Air Force and the Department of Defense. And I will tell you, when I worked in that world, there were drug tests for everybody, from the president of companies down to the rank and file folks. And so I imagine Elon has somehow avoided having to pee in a cup, but it would certainly spike a lot of those warnings. And look, his behavior in certain of these events was clearly not healthy, not good. And look, I'm not a big fan of drug abuse. I think it's a terrible, wasteful thing. Elon is not a stupid man, but he's been indulged for so long because he's so very wealthy that this drug story came as zero surprise to me.
Lastly, I wanted to ask you about your recent episode of The Elephant in the Room, which you guys do on the Lincoln Project YouTube channel. And you say that Donald Trump is not cognitively sound. Donald Trump would obviously deny that. He would cite that he has a clean bill of health from the White House doctor. So what do you have to kind of back that up?
He is incoherent. His inability to articulate any thought or position without constant asides, constant lapses, the verbal aphasias he is experiencing at various points, and his, as a very close observer of Trump since 2015, I can tell you the man you're watching today is not the Trump of 2015, nor is he the Trump of 2020. He's not even the Trump of 2024. There is a decline in Trump's ability to communicate. There's a decline in Trump's ability to articulate his thoughts. This is not, uncommon when people get older. But it is, and I'm not I'm certainly not pretending to be a gerontologist or a neurologist, but there are an awful lot of professionals in the world who are looking at the same set of behavior and saying, this is what we see in early dementia cases or in mid-tier dementia cases. This is what we see when there is a cognitive decline. Just circling an man, camera, woman, TV, circling the elephant on the cognitive test does not make Donald Trump not suffering from the ravages of age and ill health.
So similarly, there was a new book on Biden that I'm sure everyone's heard about that said that the former president had quite significant signs of aging, which his family has vehemently denied. But if that was Biden at the end of this term, and if, as you say, Trump has, a similar sort of story is being painted as to what we saw in that book, this is the beginning of his term.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it going to look like at the end?
Oh, it's going to be a big old mess. I don't look. Trump is not a healthy individual. He's a guy who subsisted off of McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken and well done steaks for a very long time. He is not a healthy guy. Whether he makes it through 4 years is an open question. But given the pace of the decline that we've seen between, and to my mind, again, if you go back and watch video of Trump speaking in 2020 in that campaign versus today, you'll be shocked. If you go back to 16 and watch video of him speaking versus today, you'll be really shocked. I don't know that he's going to be ever told by anyone, sir, you're not healthy, you can't do this anymore. I think he would say, go blank yourself. But I think by the end of this, you're going to be in a civil war with the MAGAs to choose a successor for Trump, because I think he'll be pretty much checked out by the middle of his term, of this second term.